Woodside, and welcome to Monday, January 23rd, 2017. And this, my friends, is Wake Up, Woodside! Hey, you guys, could you please put aside your breakfast and your materials so we all may rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hey, way to go, Woodside! Grab a seat as we look forward to this week's announcements, adventures, and fun to be had, commencing on Tuesday and Thursday of this week. Our third graders will be going on a field trip. Also, this Thursday after school, CASA resumes, and Thursday evening 6 to 8 is the PTO roller skating party. Come on out. And Friday is Leadership Day, Respect Responsible, Ready to Learn winners, and Friday is also the dental van. Speaking of leadership, this week's winners demonstrating respect, responsible, and ready to learn. Winners are Lola in Mr. O'Neill's, Maria in Mrs. Maxwell's, Angel in Miss Hodavy's, Geraldine in Miss Smoker's, Liliana in Mrs. Bartell's, Ariana in Mr. Gull's, Noah Mrs. Welliver's, Jaden in Mr. Edson, Isaac in Mrs. Voss, and Richie with Mrs. Inglesman. And now, the Woodside Cafe leaders demonstrating respect, responsible, and ready to learn with dashes of thoughtfulness and compassion and hardworkingness. In kindergarten, Isaiah, Mr. O'Neill's, Damien, and Mrs. Leans. First grade, Janelle with Mrs. Jawahar and Amaya in Mr. Bateman's. Second grade, Vivi and Arlise in Mrs. Bickles. Third grade, Samuel with Mrs. Evans and Lucas in Mrs. Bechtel's. Fourth grade, Christopher Z with Mrs. Maxwell and Martin in Mr. Edson's. Fifth grade, Jacqueline in Mr. Bolin Fisher's and Ethan in Mrs. Ackerson's. Hey, Woodside, keep up the great work. Being respectful, responsible, and ready to learn is something that you do even when nobody is watching. And speaking of being respectful, responsible, and ready to learn, Woodsiders know best. Respect has no time constraint or limits. Effort is infinity and beyond. It is an attitude, a commitment, and the best daily habit any mild-mannered Woodsider could have. The difference between try and triumph is a little oomph. No excuses, no blaming, just do it. Every accomplishment starts with a decision to do. Do or do not. There is no try. Woodsiders are doers, achievers, believers. They act with respect, responsible, and ready to learn. And this month, sit back, my friends, we have some pride winners at Woodside demonstrating compassion, care, commitment, respect, responsible, and ready to learn. Is Miles Dillon in Mrs. Wamoff's, Jetty Zambrero Amarda in Miss Kiefer's, Libby Petrosky in Miss Hodavy's, Lysimia Herta in Mr. O'Neill's, Mila Stone in Miss Lean's, Joshua Kronemeyer in Mr. Bateman's, Jonah Vargas in Mr. Gull's, Jaritzi Roman in Miss Joahar's, Amaya Perales in Mrs. Smoker's, J. Lynn Gordon in Mrs. Altamara's, Christopher Torres in Mrs. Bickles, Isaac Tantabuth in Mrs. Ewing's, Sergio Garcia Gomez in Miss Bartell's, Tori Guerin in Mrs. Bechtel's, Sayuri Fares in Mrs. Evans. Juliano Gutierrez Song in Miss Sherwood's. Christian Bentecourt in Mr. Edson's. Gustavo Roman in Mrs. Inglesman. Elise Garcia Coronado in Miss Maxwell Snyder's. Martin Hidrago in Mrs. Welliver's. Yuki Saturn in Mrs. Ackerson's. Osvaldo Villanueva Magna in Fisher Bolin. Devin Sonnerville in Mrs. Voss. Unique Castro from Mrs. Altamara's. Jasmine Dominguez in Mrs. Ackerson's. Yoli Laren Hoyas in Mrs. Voss. Angeline Olivias in Miss Altamara's. Sean Hun in Mrs. Bartell's. Ruby Marin with Mrs. Bickle. Brooklyn Powie with Mrs. Ackerson. Jordan Starrett in Miss Hodavies. Martin Bolinas Garcia in Miss Ewing's. Deanna Calvin in Maxwell Snyder's. And Gabrielle Perez Rodriguez in Mrs. Voss. Way to go, Woodside. Keep up the great work. Be respectful, be responsible, and ready to learn. You too can add your name to the list of people who dare to care to be respectful and do the right thing. Be good, be kind, be caring, and tell somebody you appreciate them today. Have a great week.